Hey, it's Dan McLaughlin for I Promise. Digital eye strain. Have you heard of it? Perhaps you're dealing with it. There are a bunch of symptoms that can develop as a result of digital eye strain. Sore, tired, or dry eyes, headache, sensitivity to light, and even disrupted sleep. All of that prolonged use of our digital devices adds up and can lead to severe eye strain issues. And this is true for both adults and kids. That's where I Promise comes in. Headquartered right here in St. Louis. I Promise Eye Vitamins provide the local solution to our screen time problems. Their products, Screen Shield Pro and Screen Shield Teen, are natural vitamins formulated by optometrists, made in the U.S., certified by NSF for purity. Screen Shield comes with a 60-day money-back satisfaction guarantee, and if you go to ipromise.com to order, use promo code MAC as in Danny Mac, you'll get 50% off. Your eyes will thank you. That's ipromise.com. Use promo code MAC, M-A-C, for 50% off today. Upgrade your eyes with Screen Shield.
This is the Carricker and Smallman podcast, powered by I Promise. Now here's Carricker and Smallman.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Carricker and Smallman on 101 ESPN. It is 7 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. Your time check brought to you by Clarkson Jewelers and officially licensed Rolex Jeweler. Good morning, Michelle. How are you?
I'm doing well, Randy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to the Cardinals getting back in action today. They take on Cleveland tonight, and our friend Adam Wainwright will be on the hill. We'll talk to him tomorrow on his way to the ballpark for a day game at Progressive Field in Cleveland. Two-game series between the Cardinals and the Indians. The Cardinals can get over 500 in Ohio after going 1-2 over the weekend.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be talking to Adam Wainwright after a win.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we're looking forward to that. Tonight, Wainwright against Cal Quantrill, 6:10 with the first pitch. You'll see the game on Bally Sports Midwest. We're going to get back to baseball in a moment, but the big news of the morning, the big news of the day, the big news probably of the week, Simone Biles, the American superstar gymnast, out of the team competition in Tokyo this morning on the vault. She had an awkward landing, the worst vault score of her career. She walked off with a trainer, came back in sweats, and Jordan Childs took over for her in the team competition. So Simone Biles, at least for the team competition, and hopefully not for the individual competition, out in Tokyo.
Yeah, this is the best vaulter in the world, so people knew that something was up even during the vault. She was supposed to do a Yurchenko with 2.5 twists, but she ended up just doing 1.5 twists and as you mentioned, stumbled on the landing there. So before people even had confirmation that she might be injured, they knew that if she didn't go full out, something was amiss there with Simone Biles, who's the best in the world. And this is just, of all people that we did not need to get injured as far as Team USA is concerned in the Summer Olympics. We don't want anyone to ever get injured. But Simone is the marquee name for so many people who are tuning in to watch the Olympics.
She really is the face of these Olympics, isn't he? And
absolutely.
Isn't she in America?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so she is out of the team competition. That competition going on in Japan, obviously, as we speak, early this morning. And obviously that causes a huge hit to the U.S. chances to win gold also.
Absolutely. Simone, as we mentioned, the best vaulter in the world. America's counting on that score. So without that normal high score in her vault, the United States finished the first of 4 events already more than a point behind Russia. So it puts them at a disadvantage there. And who knows what's going to happen with Simone moving forward. But doesn't look great for Team USA Gymnastics. And my heart breaks for any athlete that gets injured, but especially Simone Biles, who... just having watched her here in St. Louis, Randy, yes, she's the GOAT, but I think so many people in St. Louis developed such an affection for her and for this women's gymnastics team after getting to go to the trials, and we felt a personal connection there. So to see her be injured and not be able to compete in the vault the way that she had trained to in one of the biggest moments of her career, it's just very sad.
That's the thing. If Patrick Mahomes comes back after winning the Super Bowl and loses the Super Bowl next year, he's got next year.
Right.
She trained 5 years to defend her championship in the Olympics, and this is it. She's done after this at the age of 24. She will not be competing in another Olympics in 3 years.
And you think about the pandemic and the way everything got disrupted and all of these athletes having to try to find a place to train during a pandemic and stay mentally sharp during a pandemic, not know what's going to happen with the Olympics. And to think that you would get through all of that and then you're at your event a place where you normally shine. You've waited this long for this one moment, and then you get injured. It's just so sad.
We mentioned last night that the Cardinals were off. The Brewers were off as well. So the Cardinals remain 8 behind in the National League Central. The Cubs did win. Javi Baez, a walk-off base hit to center field to beat the Reds. So the Cardinals now trail the Reds by a single game in the division. And the Cubs are a half game behind the Cardinals. Cardinals are 50-50. The Cubbies are 50-51. And the Cubbies may be headed down the stretch of their dynasty. The trade deadline later this week, we're going to talk to John Morosi of MLB Network coming up at 8:15 about what's going on with the trading deadline. But Tim Kirchin of ESPN says he thinks that Chris Bryant may wind up in the Big Apple.
Well, I think it is important not just to win the division, but if they make the playoffs, they're going to have to go up against some really good teams, Milwaukee, San Diego, San Francisco, and the Dodgers. And the Mets, I think, are going to have to do something. They are a subpar offensive team, and Chris Bryant is out there. To me, he would be the perfect fit to play third base for the Mets. It won't be easy to get him, but it's possible that he's on the move. They're also looking for a starting pitcher, of course, given that Jacob deGrom's situation is unclear at the moment. Kyle Gibson is out there. He could really help the Mets. They can't have these kind of expectations coming in and then not do anything at the break. I think they will.
I have 2 questions, Michelle. Number 1, how much is it going to cost to get Chris Bryant? And number 2, how many teams are going to be interested in him? How many teams need that bat? And he can play the outfield. He can be fine in left field for you. But how many teams are really going to be in on Chris Bryant? I wonder.
First question is probably a lot. Mm-hmm. Second question is probably not a lot. I would imagine the asking price for Chris Bryant is going to be incredibly high. And you're right. He's got a lot of versatility and obviously was on a championship team. He's a desirable piece for any team that has the assets to go after him. But I don't know how many teams feel like they're in a position to win right now and will go out there and acquire someone like Chris Bryant. I imagine the list of teams that are actually in on him is pretty small.
I don't think the Mets would trade him, or the Cubs rather, would trade him to the Brewers. The Giants are pretty well set. Their offense is really good. The Dodgers, even though he is a versatile player, they don't really have a place to play him. I guess they could put him in left, but they've got A.J. Pollock out there, and they've got multiple outfielders. The Padres have already made their big trade. I can't imagine that they're going to replace Tommy Pham with Chris Bryant. So then you look at the American League. Do the Red Sox make a move like that? Well, they've got a third baseman. I suppose they've got a DH. I don't see the Red Sox making that move. Tampa just went out and got Nelson Cruz. They're loaded with outfielders. They're okay at third base, although I guess they could use him at third base. Maybe Tampa is an option. I don't think there's going to be a huge market for him, and the Cubs are going to lose him in free agency anyway. So they have to decide, would we rather get a pick after the first round or get a decent prospect?
It seems like the Mets are the landing spot, no?
They're logical, right.
Not only is it logical, it seems like that's really the only team in recent weeks that we've really heard him connected to, at least from multiple places. It just seems like that's the landing spot. And I keep reading and hearing, Randy, Anthony Rizzo and the Boston Red Sox. There seems to be a lot of interest there as well. And I wonder if you're the Cubs, why not deal both of those guys? Javi Baez, too. Mm-hmm. There's always been talk about maybe keeping Anthony Rizzo around because he's so beloved in Chicago. Not that Chris Bryant and Baez aren't. I'm not suggesting that. But Anthony Rizzo, in a lot of ways, is the face of that team. It just seems like maybe they would want somebody to build around. But if I'm the Cubs and I'm really trying to tear this all down and blow it all up, why not try to get something for Anthony Rizzo if you can?
And if you're Jed Hoyer, you go to the Yankees and say, we're offering him to the Red Sox too. Then you go to the Red Sox and say, we're offering him to the Yankees too, and just see what happens.
Yeah, start a bidding war. Who knows? A rivalry bidding war. Even though I read last night, apparently the Yankees might have made an offer to Trevor Story. So financially, right. Who knows where they're at? And
they could play him in center field. That's the thought process. Is unbelievably, Trevor Story could wind up playing center field for somebody. Shocking news yesterday out of Columbia late in the afternoon. We got word that Jim Sterk is stepping down as the Missouri athletic director. He had 2 years left on an original 7-year contract, and he sent the email to his staff yesterday. He and the university president, Mun Choi, mutually decided that Sterk would step down once a new leader is found. So he'll be around. I find it really surprising. Number one, I find it somewhat troubling that this will be, in 7 years, the fourth athletic director at the University of Missouri, even though you had one guy leave in Mac Rhodes and you had Alden step down. But still, I think that you need to have a higher level of stability to run your athletic department. And the other part is Stirk has done such a magnificent job of raising funds for their new indoor practice facility. I wonder, and he's 65. And Dave Matter is going to join us. Are we going to officially have Dave? Do we know yet? We don't know yet. But we're going to try to talk to Dave Matter later. I can't figure out why he is no longer going to be the athletic director at Mizzou.
Yeah, when I first heard this news, I went, what? That's out of nowhere, at least from where we sit. I wasn't anticipating that news. And then when you read the story, Dave Matter had a great piece, obviously, and the press release, and you hear this sentence: we now begin a national search for a visionary athletics director who will develop a strategic plan for Mizzou to achieve exceptional success in the SEC and navigate a bold path in the rapidly evolving world of collegiate athletics. I don't wonder if Mizzou just didn't think that Jim Stirk was the guy to make them a powerhouse in the SEC, even though he was the steward that guided them through the South End Zone project. And as you mentioned, did a lot from a fundraising perspective. I wonder if they are thinking we need to get to a different tier in the SEC, especially if programs like Texas and Oklahoma, and who knows what else is going to happen from a realignment perspective. All this stuff with name, image, and likeness is happening. It is a rapidly evolving college athletics world. So I'm wondering if Mizzou is thinking that he's not the guy to bring them to that level. But who knows? This could have been fully his decision. We don't know yet.
There are tons of young, visionary athletic directors around the country with Mizzou ties that have been assistants to either Alden or Stirk over the years. And there are some even in the SEC, but you got to pay those guys. And they did step up, to their credit, and they paid Eli Drinkwitz $4 million a year. So if you're looking for that young visionary guy, you better be willing to pay the price for him. And obviously, that the big job for an athletic director now is to be able to raise funds. And I thought Stirk was doing an okay job of that.
It seems like he was, so who knows?
We'll hopefully talk to Dave Matter about that later on. The Blues have extended qualifying offers to all 6 of their restricted free agents. They said they were going to do this last week, and Doug Armstrong did offer contracts to Ivan Barbashev, Pavel Buchnevich, Dakota Joshua, who, by the way, I think is going to probably be the fourth-line center for the Blues, Jordan Kyrou, Zach Sanford, and Robert Thomas. So presumably all of those guys will be here again for the 2021-2022 season.
And they retain contract negotiation rights with these players when free agency opens tomorrow. Do you expect a lot of movement right out of the gate tomorrow?
In the league?
Yes.
Yeah, every good player will be signed by the end of tomorrow.
That's a really fun thing in the NHL when there's a flurry of activity right away.
They can have a TV show on NHL Network or a radio show. They do. It's for the free agent frenzy. And sometimes baseball happens and you have nothing going on. Football happens and you have one trade on the day or one free agent signing. It's going to be amazing tomorrow. There's going to be 20 guys. And Landeskog will sign. He's going to land somewhere. All of the
He
big
will Landeskog.
Good one. And one other note, we're going to talk about this as we go along during the course of the day, and I'm sure you've already heard the news that Aaron Rodgers is going to be back in Green Bay. Apparently landed this morning. They do a really good job in Green Bay of scoping out the airport, and they had the video of Aaron Rodgers landing and heading on over to the Packers practice facility. And Michelle, you and I, since this all came about on draft day, we've talked about how Aaron Rodgers wanted Peyton Manning or Tom Brady type power. And Adam Schefter, who broke the news, says that Rodgers is going to get Peyton Manning or Tom Brady type power.
In the past, I think the Packers have gone to Aaron Rodgers and said, we want your input into some personnel decisions that we make. We're going to include you on some key personnel decisions that you make, only to not do that and not follow up and not include him. And I think now, going forward, Aaron Rodgers, I think, is going to be included and consulted. And they're going to do things, I think, to try to make him happy. I think those are the kinds of things that in this potentially last season in Green Bay that the Packers will look to avoid if they're hoping to improve the relationship with Aaron Rodgers.
So it was never about the money, as we figured. This was all a power dynamic. And the way that I interpret that is he's getting the power he wants this season, and then he's out.
Yeah, well, that's what we're thinking right now.
Right now. Things could obviously evolve over the course of the season. But as we sit here right now at 7:14 a.m. on July 27th, it seems like he's getting what he wants. So he feels satisfied that he's getting a certain level of power. And he really has no other option unless he doesn't want to play. But it seems like his contract is getting renegotiated to where he's getting what he ultimately, it seems like he wants, which is to get out.
And here's my question, though, and we're going to go through this later on in the show. It's going to be a fun exercise. But we might get to the trade deadline, Michelle, and he says, I want this guy. They go get this guy. And they make him the highest paid player in the history of pro sports in America. And only Lionel Messi had a bigger contract than the one Rodgers was offered by the Packers. Lionel Messi? Whatever. He's not listening.
I don't know. I heard he's a fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Streams it.
so what if he has the power and can get the money in Green Bay?
But if you're Green Bay, what else are you going to do? There's no one. Yes, it is a team sport, but your chances to win are made or broken by Aaron Rodgers being out on the field for you. And so if this is what you need to do, he's one of the greatest to ever do it. And from an organizational standpoint, you certainly don't want to be caught in a bind financially or from a power dynamic standpoint, but it's also Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
So what are you supposed to do? We're not, no disrespect, but we're not talking about Dwayne Haskins here. We're talking, this is not a Kirk Cousins type conversation. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers. You need to make him happy if you want to win.
But my question is, if he has the power and the Packers are comfortable with him having the power, and then they go back and say, well, we'll offer you that contract again. How do you turn it down?
You can't.
I wouldn't think so.
Well, he can. It's not about the money.
It's true. That's Michelle. I'm Randy. We're off and running here on Carricker and Smallman. Next up, get your text into the Air Comfort Service text line 65780 for a little game of What's Better on 101 ESPN.
We're right back to the Carricker and Smallman podcast on 101 ESPN.
It is time for What's Better on 101 ESPN. Michelle, Emily, and Randy with you. And we appreciate your text to the Air Comfort Service text line at 65780. Emily, what do you got for us?
From the 314, what's better, Six Flags or Holiday World?
I've never been to Holiday World.
I haven't either. I think I'm going to go with Six Flags just because of my ignorance of Holiday World.
Same. I think I just by default have to go with Six Flags. And Holiday World is not in the St. Louis area.
No, it's not.
So I'm going with Six Flags.
Holiday World isn't vacation, is it? Holiday World? No, it's not. The movie Vacation.
The movie Vacation?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Chevy Chase.
Oh, you mean National Lampoon's Family Vacation?
Yes, there you go.
I didn't know if there was a different vacation because there's a million movies I haven't seen.
65780, the world knows what amusement park they were going to that was closed. I just don't remember right off the top of my head.
Okay.
From the 636, what's better, the Blues getting Gabriel Landeskog or the Cardinals getting Trevor Story?
The Cardinals getting Trevor Story. For the long term, Cardinals getting Trevor Story.
Yeah, that would be great. Now, I would take either, but the Cardinals getting Trevor Story addresses an immediate need. Not that Landeskog doesn't, but there's always perhaps Matthew Tkachuk down the line.
Exactly, Michelle.
So,
you nailed it.
That's where my head's at there. So I'm thinking Trevor Story to the Cardinals. Would love that.
Yesterday, by the way, Ken Rosenthal had a piece in The Athletic surmising that perhaps at some point in the near future, the Nationals will want to move Trey Turner. That's the guy I want the Cardinals to get. I'm willing to wait on Trevor Story if I can get a guy like Trey Turner who could hit at the top of my lineup and play a great shortstop, too.
I'd take either.
Yeah, I would, too.
From the 636.
Wally World, by the way. Thank you very much for the text. We do appreciate it.
Wally World. Okay.
That's what I thought, but I'm ignorant and I haven't really seen the movie. So, or I did when I was like 3, so I don't know. From the 636, what's better in the same vein, Disneyland or Disney World?
Again, only been to Disney World, so.
I think... Now, Disney World is much bigger. They aren't landlocked. In Anaheim, Disneyland is. But the weather in Anaheim is much better than the weather in Orlando, generally speaking. So I believe I'm going to go with Disney World. I'm going to go with Disney World, or Disneyland, I'm sorry, over Disney World.
Are you a big amusement park guy?
No, not at all.
Same. Now, if it's Six Flags and it's here and you could just go there for the day, or when you were a kid on a field trip or something, great time. But I am never someone that wants to spend my money and, more importantly, my vacation days going to an amusement park. And now I don't have children, so I think that obviously plays into that decision a lot. But I know there's a lot of adults without children that like to go to Disney all the time.
BK is a huge Disney guy.
Yeah, no children, adult Disney people. That's a thing. And I'm not in that camp. It's just very hot. And it doesn't seem very relaxing to me.
Yeah.
And I like to relax on vacation.
Yeah. In our younger days, we went to like Universal Studios, took the Universal Studios tour. I think we did Disney World in our younger days when we were out for an all-star game in Anaheim. But it is different and more fun with the kids.
From the 314, what's better, Mama Melina or Mama Manning?
Okay, so you've got Mama Manning with Eli, and by the way, Archie gets a lot of credit for this, as does Olivia. You've got Peyton and Eli, both pretty good. And you've got 3 Melinas all with championship rings as catchers.
So I think the answer is pretty clear.
Yeah, Mama Melina is definitely more prolific, even though her 2 have as many championship rings as the Melina's 3. But yeah, and Yadi's here. So
and Yadi's here.
I'm going to go with Mama Melina.
Also, think about the passion and the intensity that the Molinas have.
Yeah.
And where do you think that comes from? Their parents.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, Benji is in the booth, and we have both Mannings that are going to broadcast. And Yachty, who knows? He could play for many years to come. You never know when the end of the road is for Yachty, but that's always an option for him, too. So they could be tied as far as brothers in the booths as well.
Does Yachty go out as a 39-year-old champion like Peyton did?
Does he have a defense to carry him like Peyton did?
No, not really.
No disrespect to Peyton, one of the all-time greats, but I wouldn't say he was the reason that they won that Super Bowl.
From the 217, what's better, Randy's Chubby Bunny Challenge or Michelle having her fingers taped to the desk for the whole show?
Well, I didn't have them taped to the desk. I had my thumbs taped to my hands, no opposable
Which
thumbs.
was very entertaining. And by the way, Michelle did a great job in not complaining that day.
Because if I would have opened that door, it would have taken over the entire show.
You would not have heard the end of it.
You would not have. So I tried to just keep it stuffed in the box.
You did a good job.
You know, but I have to go with the Chubby Bunny.
Do you?
Because that was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I hadn't done that since I was a kid, or seen anyone do that since I was a kid. And you really went for it, Randy. 13 of the big marshmallows.
Yeah.
These are not the small little guys.
I don't mess around.
These are the s'mores type of marshmallows. And you got 13 in your mouth. And even when you would start laughing and they would start to shoot out of your mouth, you would find a way to get them back in. It was very impressive work.
Chubby Bunny.
I was surprised that you had, like, at the beginning, you had 2 kind of almost like, you look like a walrus.
I was trying to do, the squirrel thing.
Yeah.
It looks great.
And you made it to 13 and you were at like 4 at that point.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah.
No way. You did it.
Was a very effective strategy.
If I didn't have a massive gag reflex, I probably could have done 16. But I just can't put something against the back of my throat. Otherwise, they would have projectiled all over the place. That would not have been good.
We don't want that.
From the 636, what's better, watching the Cubs rebuild or watching the Blackhawks rebuild?
Oh, man, this is a good one.
Probably the Blackhawks for me.
It was fun seeing the fact that, like, Keith and Seabrook just, not the injuries and the illness and all of that stuff, but just the fact that they couldn't play to the level that they had in the past, especially Seabrook. You know, wakey, wakey, Brent.
Ugh. The way that at least from where I sit, I have genuine, real dislike for the Blackhawks. Not only because they had success when the Blues just couldn't get over that hump. You had the wakey thing. Those teams, those Blues and Blackhawks teams through that stretch when the Blackhawks were really good, were always going at each other. It was always very physical. And they were just such an unlikable team.
They are, yeah.
Whereas with the Cubs, it's been a friendly rivalry between Chicago and St. Louis for a long time. And I think for so long, the Cardinals just never thought that the Cubs would win. They were the lovable losers, right? And then they surprised everybody and they did win. But it just doesn't feel like the Cubs are that much of a threat to the Cardinals.
And
which I know we probably shouldn't think that way because right now they're pretty comparable, but
we should be tired of and not enjoy watching the Cubs rebuild because for the better part of 100 years, that's what they've been doing. Better part of 110 years. But that being said, I do get some sick pleasure out of seeing this dynasty that resulted in one champion. The Blackhawks were a legitimate dynasty.
Legitimate, yes.
Okay, so I have respect for that. The Cubs didn't take advantage of their dynasty, so I get a small chuckle out of that. So I actually get more of a kick out of seeing the Cubs rebuild. That's better.
Yeah. I just assume that at some point the Cubs are going to cub it up, so I'm not that worried.
They have, and they did.
Whereas the Blackhawks...
Yeah. Well,
they've been good. And different regime.
We
obviously.
wish we could be the Blackhawks, right? We've never wished we could be the Cubs to this point, but we wish we could be the Blackhawks.
Ooh, that feels gross even hearing you say that.
But think about it.
I know. More championships, I get it.
The cool thing was, though, and you hated them.
Hated.
So everybody hated the greatest show on turf because they were arrogant and they were good. Everybody hated Tony's Cardinals because they were arrogant and they were good. There's no better feeling as a fan to have your team be hated because they're arrogant and they're good.
You're so right. And it feels like in St. Louis, we've been chasing that feeling, at least for the Cardinals, for a while.
It's been a while. Got one more?
Yeah, we'll do one more. From the 636, what's better? Watching Kansas twisting in the wind or watching Texas crawling on their knees to the SEC?
I got to admit, I always go back to their old athletic director, DeLoss Dodds, who had that Texas draw saying, a bad year at Texas is like a good year at Missouri. I love seeing Texas crawl on their knees to the SEC.
So do I. And I'm going to love it even more when Texas gets into the SEC and they get whooped every single weekend because they're not as good as they think they are. And they're not even great, and they think they're better than they are.
And that Longhorn Network won't be around to show them getting whooped in the Olympic sports.
It'll be, what, on nationally televised programs?
Yeah, SEC Network.
Yeah. I still don't. I know that it's the premier football league in the country. Mm-hmm. I know that Texas might be seeing the way that this is all going to unfold, so they want to make their move now so they can establish themselves in the SEC. But again, self-awareness is so important. And if I'm Texas, I want to stay in a place where I am comfortably at the top, even when I'm not good.
Yeah.
That's their entire brand, Randy, is that we are Texas. Horns up. This is the great UT. And people buy into that even when they're not good because their only real competition in the Big 12 is Oklahoma. And I don't know, they're going to go to the SEC and it's a brand new world. Yeah. As Aladdin said, a whole new world.
And I know that it is a blood oath that you take when you go to Mizzou to hate KU. But I didn't go to Mizzou. I went to Lindenwood. And I have a lot of friends that did go to Kansas. And I do feel bad that they are twisting in the wind. Now, they've earned that because of their lack of productivity in football, but their basketball program has been good for a long time. You know, how did they get there? Well, that's questionable. But still, to have a program that's been in the Big 8/Big 12 for a long, long, long time, and now you don't know where you're going to be. Baylor has a much better athletic program overall. If the Pac-12 is going to choose a couple of teams from the old Big 12, they probably take Baylor and Oklahoma State rather than KU and Texas Tech. So and Iowa State too. They're twisting in the wind. I do feel bad for those programs.
I do too. It's very unfair.
And Mizzou, it's not too long ago that Mizzou was in that same boat, and we were thinking that Mizzou might wind up in the Mountain West or something.
I remember that. That was a scary time for Mizzou fans because the Big Ten didn't want them. There was, like you said, talk of the Mountain West. It was, is this going to be musical chairs and we don't have a seat at the end?
Right.
And then they landed on the throne with the best seat in the house in the SEC.
So where we were, KU, Iowa State, probably Texas Tech feeling the same way. Coming up on 101 ESPN, we've got NFL 4 Downs with Randy and Michelle.
We're right back to the Carricker and Smallman podcast on 101 ESPN.
All right, it is time for 4 Downs. Carricker and Smallman on 101 ESPN. And I get to go first?
Yes, go first, Randy.
It is time for First Down. There we go. Michelle, Trevor Lawrence is going to be the starting quarterback for the Jaguars. We know that. But the former quarterback, Gardner Minshew is in denial. He was on Chris Long's Green Light podcast, and he said that he's preparing to battle once camp begins this week for the number 1 job. And he says he's giving up something vital to the human body because he doesn't want to have anything to do with number 2. He said, quote, to paraphrase, in preparation for the competition, I haven't taken a number 2 in weeks, as Chris Long chuckled. He said, that's not an option for me. Number 2 is not an option. Better become an option pretty quick for Gardner.
From a health standpoint?
Yeah. A health and reality standpoint.
On both sides, from a health standpoint and from a you're probably not going to be the starting quarterback. But I appreciate his fire.
Yeah.
I appreciate that he is so dedicated to being the number 1 guy that he might put himself in physical pain and or physical harm. But I just don't think that's likely. Sorry, Gardner.
No, if Trevor Lawrence doesn't start for the Jaguars, something has gone horribly wrong.
How do you explain that to the fan base?
Yeah, you can't. After they bought all their number 16 jerseys?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you can't do that.
They will be demanding to see Lawrence.
Did they win 1 or 2 games last year? Whatever it was, they earned the number 1 pick in the draft.
Second down.
Well, how about we go from the number 1 overall draft pick to the number 15 overall draft pick? Because for my second down, I want to talk about Mac Jones and the New England Patriots. So the Patriots, not great last season, not what Patriots fans are used to. First season without Tom Brady, you, of course, had a lot of guys opt out because of COVID. Cam Newton, their quarterback, then got COVID and wasn't the quarterback that a lot of people expected him to be. But the Patriots have been high on Cam. They brought him back. They think that there's a lot of talent there, even though a lot of people wonder if his best days are behind him. But they went out and they drafted Mac Jones. And I think the big storyline in New England is, A, how much better is this team going to be in their second season post Tom Brady now that they have not only a full squad, but they went out and made a lot of moves this offseason. And when does Mac Jones get the call? How long are they going to run with Cam Newton before they let Mac Jones go under center? And Mac Jones is used to waiting, Randy. He waited at Alabama. He spent 3 seasons behind Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. So I know that he will wait patiently in the wings and be learning until his number is called. But I just wonder how long Cam Newton can hold off Mac Jones. And really, I guess the question is, how good can Cam be until Mac Jones gets the call? Because I don't know if he's got it.
And I think the big overarching question that doesn't exist nationally, but does in St. Louis and in Denver, how long before Josh McDaniels is exposed as basically a fraud who is a product of Tom Brady?
That hasn't happened already?
Well, they're still giving him Cam Newton and Mac Jones and putting him in charge, letting him ruin Mac Jones, right?
But how much of that is Tom Brady and how much of it is Bill Belichick? I still think that there's other people
equal parts,
that are in the mix there.
Right. To answer your question, I don't think that after the first half of the season, I don't think that Cam Newton starts game 9 for the Patriots. Now, they might still be in the hunt. That's the thing, is that he kept him basically in the hunt last year. They went 7-9. I wonder if Belichick, though, says we need more offense because Cam did not provide great offense for them last year after COVID.
And even though you don't want to rush a young quarterback, I think they probably want to see at least what they've got in Mac Jones. If Cam Newton is not going to be the answer the following season, certainly not a long-term answer, you're going to want to give him the reins at some point to at least see what you've got in him and if he can be the guy moving forward. But we thought that about Jarrett Stidham, too.
Yeah.
When Tom Brady left, how many people in New England were saying, well, Jarrett Stidham is going to be the guy. So I would think Bill Belichick, and this is the highest he's ever personally drafted a quarterback.
Right.
So he's clearly high on Mac Jones.
And one other point here, Mac Jones only started 1 year at Alabama. He does not have a ton of experience actually playing games at that level, at the SEC NFL level. I wonder if Belichick might do with Jones, even though Belichick is 69, what Andy Reid and the Chiefs staff did with Mahomes and just set him down for a year.
Only 1 season for Mac Jones, but he was the offensive MVP in the title game. He had 4,500 passing yards, 41 touchdowns, a completion percentage of 77.4%. Pretty good season.
He was awesome.
Pretty
he was
good
great.
Season, even though it was only 1.
Third down.
Michelle, speaking of Patrick Mahomes, he says he won't have an Aaron Rodgers-type situation in Kansas City because, Mahomes says, the Chiefs do things in a different way. He says, quote, I think the biggest thing, and I can't speak for Aaron and the Packers, but I think the biggest thing when you look at it as an outsider is it's all about communication. It's all about respecting each other as a human being and communicating with each other. Aaron has played a long time with that organization, and at some point, they lost that communication factor, and I think that's where the disconnect has kind of happened. So for me and the Chiefs, I feel like if we just keep this open line of communication like we have from top down, and the team to the coaches to Brett Veach to Clark Hunt, I think there will never be a problem. I think it just comes with the culture that we built here of communicating with each other and respecting each other as people. Well, the Packers have changed GMs and coaches in the last few years. That may contribute to Rodgers' issues. Are the Chiefs really going to keep Reed and Veach and Mahomes for Mahomes' entire contract, 10 years? It doesn't seem to be the typical case in the NFL. And I'll be interested to see if the level of communication for Patrick Mahomes is as good in 2028 as it is in 2021.
It's also very easy to say that there's great communication and respect when you've got a $500 million contract.
Yeah, that adds a lot of communication. Yep. Oh, this is nice. Yeah, this check. You're really communicating with me well.
I know exactly how you feel about me.
Right.
And I think Patrick Mahomes is at a different stage of his career, to your point. He's still relatively young and relatively new, and he's had a lot of success in the onset of his career. And if he doesn't win another Super Bowl and he's in the same position as Aaron Rodgers and he realizes that the clock is ticking and he is desperate to win, and to your point, maybe there's been a new head coach and a new front office, and he doesn't feel like they've done enough to win. I wonder if in a handful of years, at the end of his career, if he would be singing the same tune.
And think about it. After the Super Bowl last year, he didn't have to say a word, and they didn't have to come to him to say, you want us to sign Joe Thuney, you want us to bring in Austin Blythe, you want us to trade for Orlando Brown, you want us to bring in Chris Long, you want us to bring Lauren DeVarnay Tardif back. He's going to say yes to all of those, and they know that. So they don't really have to communicate at this point. They did all the right things.
That's true.
Fourth down.
Finally, for me, Randy, we always have at least one eye on the NFC West. A, because most of us hate the Rams, and B, because we used to pay attention to the NFC West for a long time. And I think it's such an interesting division this year. There's a lot of movement in the NFC West, and I'm really curious about the Arizona Cardinals. So they fell short of the playoffs last season. A lot of that had to do with Kyler Murray, that late season injury. They had a 6-3 start, and they weren't able to put it together to get to the playoffs, but they made a lot of moves this offseason. They went out on offense. They added A.J. Green, James Conner, Rodney Hudson, and defensively, that was their main issue last year outside of Kyler Murray's injury. They allowed at least 26.6 times over the last 10 games of the season, and they went out, they added J.J. Watt, of course, and Malcolm Butler. And I just think that at this stage of the game and at this stage of Cliff Kingsbury's tenure, they're not going to get the pass that they got last year. Whenever someone like Kyler Murray is injured and you have a glaring problem in the defense, I think a lot of fans are willing to be patient. But I think this season, after you've made so many moves and you have Kyler Murray back yet again and you've seen glimpses of what he's going to be, I don't know if the Cardinals get a pass from their fan base if they don't make the playoffs.
And one of the things they need to do is make Chandler Jones happy. He's asked for a trade. He only played 5 games last year, and he's been one of the best pass rushers in football. But they shouldn't get a pass. We heard Roy Green tell us how surprised he was by the quality of Kyler Murray. They go out and they built a wide receiver core. Now, Larry Fitzgerald is no longer there, but they've got the best receiver in the league in DeAndre Hopkins. They've got A.J. Green now. They've got slot guys. They've got running backs. They did build up their defense, and there shouldn't be an excuse now. Granted, you play in a tough division, but your team should be good enough to play with the Rams, the Seahawks, and the 49ers.
Cliff Kingsbury's first season there, 2019, they went 5-10-1 last season, 8-8. And I think if you're the fan base, fair or not, we tend to look at things or a new tenure in 3-year chunks. And by year 3, I think a lot of people are looking at the collection of talent that they have, and they expect to be in the playoffs.
I think that's fair.
I do too.
And by the way, the Cardinals, a lot of people in St. Louis still like them, and I think probably liked them a little bit more when they found out in that hearing a couple of weeks ago that officially the Cardinals were one of the teams that voted against the Rams' move. So, Michael Bidwell, thank you, and we're rooting for you.
They're definitely the team I'm going to cheer for in the NFC West.
That is Four Downs with Carricker and Smallman on 101 ESPN. Coming up, get your text into the Air Comfort Service text line, 65780. We've got Take It or Leave It coming your way on 101 ESPN.
We're right back to the Carricker and Smallman podcast on 101 ESPN.
We do appreciate your texts to the Air Comfort Service text line, 65780, for a little game of Take It or Leave It. Michelle and Randy on 101 ESPN. All right, Michelle, interesting couple here. We like interesting couples, right, with Carricker and Smallman?
Sure, yeah.
Adele, 15-time Grammy winner. And she showed up to Game 5 of the NBA Finals in Phoenix and was sitting next to Rich Paul, who is LeBron's agent and a mega agent in the NBA. And now they've officially gone public with a PDA-filled date at Cipriani in New York City.
Cipriani.
Take it or leave it. This is a spectacular pairing of music and sports.
I'll take it. That's a power couple for sure.
Big time. Yeah, I'm pleased for both of them.
Yeah, I had seen the photos of them sitting courtside at the NBA Finals. And good for Adele.
Yeah. So I wonder if she's made her way over here to the States permanently. Doesn't she? Does she have a kid in London?
She does.
Okay. Well,
Also,
she can bring the kid over here.
Yeah, of course. That happens often. But we need some new tunes from Adele.
Yeah, we do.
Like
hasn't happened in a while, has it?
I'm thrilled with your personal life developments, Adele, but give us the music.
Take it or leave it. He becomes her agent.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're dating, well, some people don't like to mix business and pleasure.
Right.
So, the business and personal life sometimes doesn't work out. So I'm actually going to leave that. But maybe if he could give her a nudge into the studio.
Yeah. All we ask is for her happiness.
Also, maybe
his.
He could get on the phone with Kanye because everybody's been waiting for Donda. He has the listening party at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. And then we don't get the album. And allegedly, Kanye has had a bed delivered and he's living in the bowels of the stadium mixing the album. And he's not going to leave until it's done. There's rumors that he's going to have another listening party at MSG. But come on, give us the album. We want Donda.
So they're letting Kanye live at Mercedes-Benz Stadium?
Oh, yes. I will give you photos. So at his listening party, he was in this big red, almost Michelin Man type getup. And he's been wearing a mask over his head, not the mask that we've been wearing during the pandemic, but over his head.
Spider-Man look?
A little bit, yeah. And there had been rumors that he had not left the stadium and that he had had a bed delivered and was living there mixing the album after the listening party. And then during the soccer game that was there in Atlanta, Kanye emerged from the bowels of the stadium and was walking through the supporter section. And there were all of these videos, and he was in the same outfit days later after the listening party.
Wow.
So it seems like the rumors may be true that he's still inside the stadium.
He'd be crazy.
I'll tell you what, I don't care what the creative process is, but give us the album. Don't say we're doing the listening party and you're getting it at midnight and then say psych, even though that's classic Kanye. He does this all the time. But give us the album.
He's never happy with what he has, with the music that he makes.
I also, now that we're demanding new albums, Rihanna, I know you listen. Can we get some tunes?
Yeah.
Would love some new Rihanna.
It seems like it's been a decade for her.
Frank Ocean, again, big fan of the program. Can we get some tunes from you too, Frank?
Last time he turned out a song, Billy Ocean was turning out music.
Good one, Randy. Good one. Okay, so let's steer it to baseball. We're selfish when we watch sports. We like to watch things based on what our preferences are and really for our entertainment. So with that being said, take it or leave it. It's actually a bad thing that the Cubs core is getting dealt because the villains, air quotes, in Bryant, Baez, and Rizzo, we're not going to have as much hatred towards the Cubs because we don't have those villainous faces.
I'll take that. Yeah, and the fact that they beat the Cardinals in the 2015 playoffs, that's really when it all started, and Schwarber hit the long home run, and they had attitude and swagger. Yeah, I agree with you because ultimately enjoyment of sports is based on emotion, which can obviously include hatred, and those guys were great and fun to hate. And that won't be there anymore.
Rivalries are only great when there's hatred involved. And when Chris Bryant says St. Louis is boring, we hate him.
Right.
And if he's playing for the Mets, who are we going to hate on the Cubs? Yes, we'll hate the laundry. I get it. But it's just not as fun.
Has there ever been a former St. Louis athlete that played for a team that tortured the St. Louis team that has been more benign than Jason Hayward?
It's a good one. No, I don't think so.
I mean, there's never been a guy that we cared less about, right?
Yeah, think about this. He chose to leave St. Louis to go to the Cubs. He gave the rain delay speech. He won a World Series there, and it doesn't feel like many people in St. Louis hate him.
He steps to the plate in St. Louis, and we go, huh?
Yeah, there's no reaction, really.
No.
That's actually a great call. By the way, we just get a text from our resident Falcons guy, Anthony Stalter, who says Kanye needs to move out immediately, in all caps. Only Ludacris can stand the 50-yard lines where the Dirty Birds kick for 3. Great point, Anthony. Thank you for that.
Hello. What about Hammer? Anthony, he helped you get to the playoffs one time.
Well, I think
he was Hammer then. Now he's MC Hammer again. Started off as MC Hammer, then went to Hammer. And I believe now he is MC Hammer again.
So this is a Puff Diddy, P. Diddy situation?
Exactly,
where
right.
We don't really know?
Yeah. Now, he was a Falcons fan in 1991 when they just got smoked by the Redskins, so the Washington football team now in the playoffs. And their sideline consisted of multiple talent-laden musicians, but Hammer was kind of leading the charge at that point.
Randy, you were correct.
With
Hammer. He did go by Hammer for a while.
And now he's back to MC Hammer, I think, yeah.
Yes.
Hammer time.
So glad we worked that out. I was confused and concerned.
Yeah. Is Anthony getting back to us?
Anthony says Hammer is always allowed.
Okay, there we go.
Just
Thanks.
so we're very discerning which rappers are allowed to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So we've determined Hammer and Ludacris.
Yeah.
Kanye, no.
I wonder if they're fans of the great St. Louis producer, Metro Boomin, Parkway North grad.
That's right. Metro Boomin is all over the scene.
Big time. And he's in Atlanta, and he is kicking butt.
One of the great producers of a generation.
Yep, he's great.
Yeah.
And he went to high school and graduated with Patrick.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Shout out Metro Boomin.
He's big time. We love him. Emily, thanks. I think, we kind of ran out of time there.
Maybe we get one.
Yeah.
All right, I got a good one for you.
Okay, here we go.
From the 314, take it or leave it. If Rizzo was not a Cub, you would like him.
Take it.
Oh, I'll definitely
I like
take
him
it.
anyway.
I like him too.
He's just too good. That's my problem.
Yeah,
he has these 40 pitch at bats against the Cardinals and then hits home runs.
Great player, great personality. You would love him if he was on your team.
Yeah.
Absolutely love him.
Yep, he's classy. He's got a great smile, and he's a great player. And he can
Great
win.
story.
Yep. Gold gloves. Yeah, he's cool. I think I would like him better on the Yankees than the Red Sox because I just like the Yankees better than the Red Sox. But of all of those Cubs guys that I have emotion for, let's leave Jason Hayward out of the mix here. But I'm not a huge fan of Bryant. Baez, can take or leave. I don't really like him as a player. But Rizzo, yeah, I'd say I want him on my side. The Cub I want most on my side is Kyle Hendricks, but number 2 would be Anthony Rizzo.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. By the way, when I was at the Cardinals-Cubs series last week, was that last week? Yeah, last week. Saw several Cubs fans with T-shirts that said St. Louis is boring.
We are. Yep. When you win 11 championships and about 20 pennants, you're in the World Series about 20% of the time. It does get boring.
Yeah, but even though Chris Bryant might not be with the Cubs, that line's going to live on for a while.
Yeah, it is. Hey, I get it. And I hate the fact, Cubs fans, that you have to sit there at home and say, man, I'm so sick of the Cardinals being in the playoffs. I hate it because it does get boring for you, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
And thanks for your text to the Air Comfort Service text line, 65780. Coming up next on 101 ESPN, you've got Oklahoma and Texas joining the SEC. So should you have the folks from the ACC join now, too? That's next on 101 ESPN.
We're right back to the Carragher and Smallman podcast on 101 ESPN.
It is 8:04 in St. Louis, 8:05 now. Your time check brought to you by Clarkson Jewelers, an officially licensed Rolex jeweler. That's Michelle Smallman. I'm Randy Carragher. And, of course, the story of college sports over the course of the last 4 or 5 days has been the impending move of Texas and Oklahoma from the Big 12 to the SEC. And, Michelle, here we are. We are weeks away from the start of training camp for college football teams. And everything revolves around not SEC Media Day or Big 12 Media Day or Big 10 Media Day. Everything revolves around these two schools that are getting prepared to shake up the landscape of college football with a move to the SEC.
Which is incredible because we thought that the name, image, and likeness rules that were now implemented by the NCAA were going to be the big storyline heading into this college football season. But leave it to Texas and Oklahoma by proxy to shake things up or to be the storyline. Isn't this what Texas always wants, is to be the big storyline in college athletics?
Yeah, and hey, they'll be the big storyline once they start playing Alabama and Auburn and LSU on a regular basis. Things will change. They'll be a storyline. Now, the SEC will be 16 really strong athletic schools. Well, you got Vanderbilt in there, but you've got 16 really good schools in the SEC. And there's been much talk since last Friday about the possibility of super conferences. And ESPN's Jay Billis brings up the possibility of a super conference.
The interesting part for me, Matt, is what's going to happen long term, because if you're in this business now, you're going to have to start thinking bigger. Greg Sankey and the SEC are certainly doing that. If I were commissioner of the ACC, one thing I'd be thinking about is approaching the SEC and saying, look at all the natural rivalries we have interconference. Why don't we start thinking about a merger? And because that's what the SEC is going to become. It's going to become the NFL, a junior NFL and junior NBA. And there's no reason why the ACC shouldn't jump in there and take advantage of those natural rivalries and markets. And if I were Jim Phillips, I'd be ringing Greg Sankey's phone saying, how about a merger?
That would be something. Now, is that doable? I think that's a little bit unwieldy because that's basically the power of college sports, isn't it? Granted, you have maybe 4 or 5 schools in the Big Ten that would be able to dent on a football and basketball level that SEC, ACC. But I know Jay Billis is saying think big. I think that's too big.
I appreciate that he's thinking outside of the box, and with Texas and Oklahoma likely moving to the SEC, it is going to cause a lot of other dominoes to fall. And I think a lot of people have been looking down the road and wondering what the future alignment of college athletics, particularly college football, looks like. Is it going to be 4 big conferences, 4 super conferences? Is that eventually going to then evolve into 2 big conferences, one on each side of the country? Maybe it goes right down the middle. I don't know. But it makes me think, Randy, of the Super League in soccer and how against fans were. And it makes me just take a pause for a second. And I know that college athletics, particularly, again, college football, needs a little bit of a revamping because the NCAA has less jurisdiction now than they ever have. But I also don't think that you should take what are the 2 arguably preeminent or 2 of 3 preeminent college football conferences and merge 2 together to join one big super league. I love college football. And is it so wrong to say that a lot of what we see out of college football right now is fine and that it shouldn't be tampered with? Maybe we shouldn't try to mess things up. I think the playoff has been so fun. Maybe there's talk of expanding that. But the Big 12 is going to be an issue that college football is going to have to deal with, or college athletics, I should say, is going to have to deal with. But thinking that you're going to merge 2 major conferences in the ACC and SEC and just kind of let the Big 10, Pac-12, and everybody else figure it out for themselves, it doesn't feel right. It feels like you're getting one big super league, and that doesn't seem like the balance in college athletics would be fair.
And what Jay Billis said would be exactly right. A junior NFL or a junior NBA, because a merger like that would get you up to 16 teams in the SEC, 14 teams in the ACC, minus Notre Dame. That'd get you up to 30, and then you add Notre Dame to that mix and another team, and you have 32 teams, just like you do in the NFL. And to your point, then what becomes of the Big Ten? Does it make sense for the Pac-12 to come to the Midwest and merge with the Big Ten? I do think that there does come a point where with college athletes you're asking a little bit too much. If you are not going to require college athletes to go to school, if you're going to be a junior NFL or a junior NBA and let them just play sports in college, then you can do things like that. But I believe that's too big. I think if you get to 4 16-team conferences, and I don't even know if there are 64. I guess there are 64 teams where you could do 4 16-team conferences. But I do think a 30 or a 32-team league in college sports is too much.
Don't you think that this is when, I don't know, the governing body in the NCAA should be in control? And they're clearly not. All of these conferences are taking, and or schools are taking things in their own hands, and they have the power, not the NCAA, which is why I do think there needs to be real discussions about what the construct of college athletics is going to look like moving forward. But at some point, if you're college athletics, don't you want stability? Don't you want there to be some sort of an end game and then you keep it that way for a while?
Yeah.
Because it just feels like every couple years there's all of this turnover and all of this change. And from a fan's perspective, I mean, my school is Illinois and they've been in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten has made some changes, but it's pretty much the same. But you would just think at some point this is where there should be some sort of governing body that actually has control and will take the reins and say, this is what the ultimate goal is, whether it's 4 super conferences or whatever, and it's going to take a few years to get there, but I need everybody to be on the same page so that we can get the optimal result for college athletics.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like that's happening at all, and then it's the wild, wild west in so many different facets.
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, part of the allure of college athletics is the rivalry. It's Duke, North Carolina. It's Ohio State, Michigan. It's Alabama, Auburn. And it was Mizzou, Kansas. Pretty soon, it was Oklahoma, Nebraska. It was, or is going to have been Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. Those won't exist anymore. But here's what's happened. I think we all naively thought that the NCAA was in charge. And I think until the last couple of decades they have been. Then I thought it was the Power 5 commissioners. And then the Power 5 football teams, specifically, the most powerful football teams. Now I really think the power of college sports lies in the SEC. It really doesn't matter what the Big Ten does. The SEC wants to go out and get Texas and Oklahoma, fine. What the Big Ten, what the Pac-12, what the ACC do, they're following along with what the SEC wants to do. And realistically speaking, if the SEC did want to go get Clemson and Florida State, are Clemson and Florida State going to say no?
Probably not.
No. I believe that the power in college athletics rests solely in the SEC football powers.
Which just tells you how far college basketball has fallen.
Yeah. And college basketball is still overseen by the NCAA. And that's
because of the tournament?
Yeah. And so that's how far the NCAA has fallen, too, in the space of about 20 years.
But you're right. For a long time, there's at least been the illusion that these athletes are student athletes and that academics do matter and they do play a role because they are going to a university, even though we know that that's a very fluid concept, is depending on where you go to school. But if the entire intent here is just to shift everything so that it's going to be a feeder program to the NFL and the NBA, and everyone's going to be making money off their name, image, and likeness, what is going to be the allure for these student athletes to care about the student part of that moniker?
If they want to go to school, let them, but don't force them. Just let them, if they want to just play football, just let them play football, because that's the reality of the situation. I'm with you. That's Michelle, I'm Randy, and that's today's Fresh Take. Coming up, John Morosi, MLB Network, talking to MLB trade deadline on 101 ESPN.
We're right back to the Carricker and Smallman podcast on 101 ESPN.
The Cardinals open a 2-game series in Cleveland tonight. You can see the action on Bally Sports. This is 101 ESPN. Michelle Smallman, Randy Carricker. Great to have you with us. And always great to go to the Brown & Crouppen Celebrity Line and John Morosi of MLB Network and NHL Network. Big hockey guy joining us on 101 ESPN. Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Randy and Michelle, doing well. A pleasure to be with both of you in the great city of St. Louis. How's everything going?
We are enjoying ourselves, although this isn't a typical Cardinal season. And this is a weird trade deadline for the Cardinals, John, because if they're going to sell, they only really have one guy to sell, and that would be Andrew Miller. But they really aren't in a position to buy either. Are you hearing anything at all about the Cardinals?
The Cardinals are stuck. They are stuck. That is where they are. So it seems right now like it's going to be a quiet deadline for them for all the reasons that you just mentioned. They are not in a strong enough position to be an aggressive buyer. they're also not a roster that is totally flawed either. They're just not playing that well right now. And I know that it may not be a satisfying answer to give, but I think it's the reality of where they're at right now. They're not. This is not a team that needs a dramatic changeover and a reboot and some sort of dramatic transformation at the deadline. They're probably not going to make the playoffs this year. They are, I think that the fundamentals of their team, we look at the future, are still pretty strong with Arenado and Goldschmidt and Carlson and Edman. There are some pieces to like, but I think that what we're seeing now is the natural endpoint of this particular era of the Cardinals from a standpoint of maybe is this the last year of Yachty in a Cardinals uniform? Is it the last year of Wainwright? We have to wait and see. Carpenter obviously nearing the end of his contract. It's just a team that, for a number of reasons, has not clicked this year, and I think probably you'd have to say the pivot point in their season was when Flaherty went on the IL. They really have not been the same team since Jack has been injured, and I think that probably was the turning point in their season.
John, it feels like the end point for the Cubs, too, or at least the Cubs as we've known them for the past few seasons. So when you look at that core of Rizzo, Bryant, and Baez, what do you think happens with all three of those guys?
I expect Bryant to be traded. I think there's enough interest in him that he will be, whether it's the Dodgers, whether it's potentially the Mets. I think there are some larger payroll teams in the NL who have a natural interest in Chris Bryant, maybe even in the same division, the Brewers. That I would not expect that, but I think that's one more team that's looking for a corner bat at the moment, so I would stay somewhat alert for that possibility. I think Rizzo is a unique option for teams like the Red Sox and Yankees, both of whom have not had a ton of production at first base this season. Baez is interesting because I think Javi is a player who would have some interest in some appeal at second base for a handful of teams. Does his price get to the point where a team that would be maybe not expecting to win the division this year, like Seattle, would they have interest in him at second base? I think that has to be one possibility that you had mentioned. I would not expect Milwaukee for him, but he's someone who is just, Michelle, for me, just not really hit consistently enough that he's regarded in the same sentence as someone like a Chris Bryant. So I think Baez might move, but I'm not as convinced that he will in comparison at least to Bryant. And then I think on the pitching side of things, we've already seen Andrew Chafin go to Oakland. I think Zach Davies, for me, is someone that has a lot of value as a stable later part of the rotation arm who might even fit with a team like the Dodgers. I would not expect Hendricks to go, but I do think Kimbrel's going to go. I think Kimbrel, interest there by the Phillies most notably. So I think overall we're going to see a lot of changeover with the Cubs in the days ahead where it's time for them, I think, probably in a more dramatic way than the Cardinals, to maybe draw the end of this chapter and future.
You can watch MLB Network insider John Morosi across MLB Network's programming, including weekdays on MLB Central at 9 o'clock St. Louis time. And, John, you mentioned Kimbrel, and notable, as you tweeted last night, that Taylor Rogers of the Twins left their game with an apparent hand injury. And Rogers is one of two real legit closers on the market, right? He and Kimbrel. I wonder if that injury increases the Cubs' leverage with Kimbrel.
Very good point, Randy. I think it does. And Rogers, it was a very bizarre scene late in the game last night against the Tigers, where he was on the mound and then all of a sudden uncorked one pitch that just didn't look comfortable for him, whether it was a blister or some other issue, and he left the game abruptly. And that is, if you're the Twins, that's the worst kind of news at the worst kind of time. You don't want to get that news anytime, but especially not when the whole industry is watching him so carefully. So I think right now the Twins have to regroup a little bit, whereas the Cubs, to your point, have a little bit more leverage. And I think the Cubs, interestingly, I would say, Randy and Michelle, one team to keep an eye on with the Cubs would be the Dodgers. And the Dodgers, because of the uncertainty in their rotation, I think Davies has a real fit there with L.A., I also think Kimbrel does because of the concerns about Kenley Jansen. I also think Bryant has some value there, given their questions in their corner outfield spots with Mookie Betts now being on the IL. So could I see a dramatic, really compelling, large-scale trade? Kimbrel, Bryant, Davies, it's always hard to make one of those blockbusters that involve lots of players. But I was told in recent days by Minnesota President of Operations Derek Falvey that teams out there have a real appetite for those larger deals because it allows those selling clubs to access a higher level of prospect back. So rather than quantity back, you're going to get quality back, and I think that's what those larger deals would allow you to do.
John, one of the big names that we've discussed a lot is Trevor Story. Where do you think his likely landing spot is?
You know, it's an interesting question, Michelle, because he's got a great brand name. He's been a very good shortstop for a long time in this league. I expect he'll do well in the free agent market, but he has not played that well this season. He has not played that well this year. He's someone that the numbers and the consistency day-to-day hasn't been there. So that's where I think he probably has greatest value to a club that could use him at another spot that's not necessarily shortstop. Could he go to Milwaukee and play first base? Could he go to the Red Sox and play first base? Could he go to the Yankees and play first base? So I think he is someone that has a good chance to move, but I don't think of him as a shortstop right now. I'm just not seeing enough reliability day to day, and so that's why I think on a shorter-term deal, teams like Milwaukee, the Yankees, and Red Sox actually might be the best landing spots for Trevor Story.
Yankees are 9.5 back in the division, only 3.5 back in the wild card. But based on what you have seen from the Yankees, what we've all seen from the Yankees, is it worth it for them? Let me put it this way. Even if they make deals, are they good enough to win a World Series? Is it worth it for them to rent a few guys?
Great question, Randy. I think that if they get the right play in, I don't think that they're that far away from winning a wild card game and making a run. I look at Garrett Cole and say he is someone that any team would not want to see on the mound against them in the month of October. But the question is going to be who pitches game 2 and how consistent will they be? Is Domingo Germán their second best starter right now? What do they expect with Corey Kluber's health going forward? A lot of question marks right now. And their bullpen has been good, but maybe not as dominant as you would expect, with Aroldis Chapman having some inconsistencies here in recent days. So I think overall it's a team that is more than one player away, but these are things they could do if Brian Cashman really wants to be aggressive. The thing to me that stands out is their lack of left-handed power. They have the second fewest home runs among left-handed hitters of any team in the American League, which is just not at all what you expect from the franchise that made its identity on Ruth and Gehrig and Mantle as a switch hitter and Jackson. I mean, these are the Yankees, and they're not hitting for power from the left side. It's really an identity crisis for the New York Yankees right now.
That's a great way to put it, John. Is there a team that we haven't mentioned here that we should keep an eye on that you expect to be active as we approach the trade deadline?
I think as a seller, the Twins will be active. We've mentioned in the past Jose Berrios as a starting pitcher. He might be the best controllable starter, at least beyond the end of this year, who was moved. And then with the Nationals, Max Scherzer, of course, your native St. Louis, and I don't think he will be going to the Cardinals necessarily, but I do believe that Max is someone who is potentially going to move. And I would say those teams out west in the NL West, Padres, Giants, Dodgers, all being very active in both the Jose Berrios market as well as Max Scherzer.
Yeah, you mentioned the Padres. It seems like A.J. Preller just wants 26 All-Stars, right?
Sure. Well, A.J. is someone who's always going to be active. And I'll tell you what, this is the value of a good farm system. When you have a number of highly regarded prospects who are all starting to arrive around the same time, you can package them in deals that are a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 because your rosters are so abundant with prospects in the minor leagues that you can do that. So, yes, I think A.J. Preller is going to be very, very active on the buying side, and I think the more active sellers will be teams like the Twins, Cubs, and now potentially the Washington Nationals as well, in addition to the Pittsburgh Pirates.
And one more question about San Diego and those teams in the American League East, because they're right up against the luxury tax now. Is there a chance with the addition the other day of Frazier that they move Cronenworth to first and move Eric Hosmer out of there?
Yes, that is a possibility, and I think it's one that a lot of people in the industry are watching very carefully. You're right. The luxury tax threshold and how you control that is now a pivotal part of being a GM and you could see perhaps the Padres pay down that contract where Hosmer becomes a $10 million player to somebody else or even a $12 million a year player to someone else. I think at that point in time there would be interest and he would have some appeal across the industry.
John, we know here in St. Louis, anytime you can get a $35 million a year player for $25 million and the other team's paying 10, it's a pretty good deal.
I would say so, and that's obviously part of the conversation. We'll see how things play out going forward.
John Morosi, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it, and have a great trade deadline week. We love your work, and we'll talk to you soon.
Well, Randy and Michelle, my pleasure. You've got the hockey free agency and trade deadline in the same week. It's my kind of week. I love it.
Hey, we've got Vladimir Tarasenko here. We might have a lot of news.
And he could be moving out, right? Depending on if we see Tarasenko and Max Scherzer traded in the same week, what a sports story that's going to be.
You got that right. Have a great day. Thank you.
All the best. My pleasure. Thank you.
Take care. John Morosi, MLB Network, joining us on the Brown and Crouppen Celebrity Line on 101 ESPN. And as we mentioned, you can watch John across MLB Network's programming, including weekdays on MLB Central at 9 in the morning. Coming up, we've got The Fight on 101 ESPN.
We're right back to the Carricker and Smallman podcast on 101 ESPN.
Welcome to The Fight on Carricker and Smallman. In the red corner, Average Joe Listener. And in the blue corner, the undisputed king of morning drive. Please welcome Randy Carricker.
It's time for The Fight on Carricker and Smallman here on 101 ESPN. Randy's challenger today is Dave. What's up, Dave? How's your Tuesday going so far?
Oh, not too bad. How are you?
We're doing well. We're cruising through the show today. I can't believe it's already fight time. Are you ready to take on Randy?
Yes.
All right. Well, good luck to you, Dave. We're cheering for you. Question number 1. First of all, we wanted to let you know that 101 ESPN has your chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash for the Cardinals versus the Braves on August 3rd. That game features an exclusive Bo Hart bobblehead giveaway. Which position did Bo Hart play in his 2 seasons with St. Louis? Shortstop, outfield, or second base?
Second base.
Which Cardinal hit the most home runs in a single season in the 2000s? Scott Rowland, Albert Pujols, Jim Edmonds.
Albert Pujols.
Question number 3, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are in the news. The team looks to come to an agreement with their longtime quarterback. Back in 2011, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers went 15-1 in the regular season. Who did they suffer their only loss to? Was it the Minnesota Vikings, the Chicago Bears, or the Kansas City Chiefs?
We'll say Minnesota Vikings.
And the Padres trade for utility man Adam Frazier officially went through yesterday, sending 3 prospects to Pittsburgh. Which SEC West school did Frazier play college baseball for? Was it Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU?
Ole Miss.
Okay, score check here. Waving in Randy. Dave, where are you calling from today?
Rock Hill.
Awesome. Shout out to Rock Hill. Randy is taking his mask off, getting settled in. You don't want to leave that on while you talk on the radio. Randy, please say good morning to Dave.
Dave, good morning. Thanks for listening. Thanks for playing. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you very much for joining us. Great to have you.
I'm going to lose, I think.
Come on, Dave.
Let's be positive here.
Yeah.
Sunshine.
Positive thoughts yield positive outcomes.
That's what they say.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
All right.
15 and 65. That's all I have to say.
We weren't thinking positively during that stretch.
No,
I can
true.
promise you that.
That's true.
We were thinking, oh, man, do we have to watch this game on Sunday?
You were thinking that.
Yeah, it was bad. Randy, before I ask you the question, I wanted to let you know 101 ESPN has your chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to next Tuesday night's Budweiser Bash for the Cardinals versus the Braves on August 3rd. That night, they're giving away an exclusive Bo Hart bobblehead. Which position did Bo Hart play in his 2 seasons with St. Louis?
He was a second baseman.
Which Cardinal hit the most home runs in a single season in the 2000s?
In the 2000s, it would have had to have been the year Albert hit 47. I'm going to go with that.
Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are in the news, as you know, Randy. The team and Rodgers looking to come to an agreement. Back in 2011, Rodgers and the Packers went 15-1 in the regular season. Who did they suffer their only loss to?
Who did they lose to? 2011. Logic would dictate here that it was a game in the division and probably against the Vikings.
Padres trade for utility man Adam Frazier officially went through yesterday, sending 3 prospects to Pittsburgh. Which SEC West school did Frazier play college baseball for?
So he was SEC West. So he would have been Vandy, Mizzou. It wasn't Mizzou, we know that. Florida. I'm just going through the schools here, just for fun. Tennessee. I'm going to play the chalk here. I'll do the lifeline. What the heck?
Was it Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU?
Okay. Let's see. Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU. I will go with LSU.
All right, dudes. We have a tie.
All right.
A tie between Randy and Dave. All right, Dave, here's how this is going to work. I'm going to read the tiebreaker question. Randy's going to write down his answer on his sheet of paper. That Edward Jones Dome Rams sheet of paper getting dangerously low.
I've got more where these came from.
Did you just take a ton of them, knowing it's going to be the last season there?
No, it was 8 games a year for many years.
Oh, so see, I would just use the same pad every game.
Oh, they
gave you new ones, though.
Yeah, but every week it's in your folder.
Yeah. I'm
So
just
I take my folder with the game notes and all of that
There
stuff,
you
and
go.
it just happened to be there.
All right. Anyway, I'm going to read the question, Dave. Randy's going to write down his answer. You're going to get first crack at this, and then Randy's going to reveal what he wrote down on his sheet of paper. First to get it correct or closest to the pin wins, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Here is your tiebreaker question for Randy and Dave. How many triples did the National League as a whole hit in the 2020 regular season?
So this was last year, huh?
How many triples did the National League as a whole hit in the 2020 regular season?
Okay. I'm figuring this out.
I'm seeing Randy carry the one.
Yeah, I did carry the one. Good job.
Yeah, I always carry the one.
Okay.
I'm going to go with 242.
242 for Dave. Randy, your answer is
120.
120. Who won this fight? Emily, let him know.
The winner and still champion of the fight, Randy Carricker. The Fight, sponsored by Ryan Kelly and HeroLoan.com. Check out how they help veterans and service members at the new and improved HeroLoan.com.
We heard that groan, Dave. I know it stinks to lose on the tiebreaker question. So close. But you guys both got 2 correct during the fight. So Bo Hart played second base in his 2 seasons with St. Louis. The Cardinal that hit the most home runs in a single season in the 2000s was Albert Pujols. 49 home runs in 2006. 49 home runs. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers went 15-1 in the regular season back in 2011, suffering their only loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. Week 15 at Arrowhead. They lost 14-19.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's see. Adam Frazier, the SEC West school that he played college baseball for, is Mississippi State. And your tiebreaker question was, how many triples did the National League as a whole hit in the 2020 regular season? Dave guessed 242. Randy guessed 120. The correct answer is 126.
Wow.
126. So Randy was closer to the pin. He takes home the W. Dave, thank you so much for listening. Thanks for playing. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us here on 101 ESPN. Interesting.
What?
That I just have no idea what conference or what division the SEC has. I just have no idea. I was thinking the Mizzou side, not the other side.
Well, don't worry. You won't have to learn it until Texas and Oklahoma move in.
Then it'll just kind of be the Big 12 division.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? You'll have, the Southwest Conference / Big 12, because you'll have Arkansas. They were in a conference with Texas, and then obviously Oklahoma and Missouri. So, and So, yeah, it'll be half of your division will be old Big 12 / Southwest Conference teams. Yes, ma'am.
Can I clear my name real quick?
Yeah, you can.
Several people have texted in saying that I've used this tiebreaker before. I have not.
I don't recall that.
No, I used how many triples did MLB hit? This was just the National League.
Yeah.
I keep a log of everything that I do so we don't repeat.
That's good. So I just figured you saw me carry the one?
I saw you carry the one.
I did 15 times 8. 15 teams in the National League, and I figured about 8 per team was on average.
Pretty good logic. You were close.
Thank you. That is the fight on 101 ESPN. Coming up, Jim Sterk departs as the Missouri athletic director. He's going to stick around until they have a replacement. We're going to talk to Dave Matter, our friend from STLtoday.com and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, about the departure of Jim Sterk. Next on 101 ESPN.
We're right back to the Carricker and Smallman podcast on 101 ESPN.
That's Michelle. I'm Randy. It's great to have you with us on 101 ESPN. We got word late yesterday afternoon, and Dave Matter of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and STLtoday.com had word on Twitter that the University of Missouri and Missouri Athletics Director Jim Sterk have mutually agreed that he will step down from his position once a new leader is found. And Dave Matter, who covers Mizzou so well for STLtoday.com and the Post-Dispatch, joins us on the Brown and Crouppen Celebrity Line. Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Doing well, guys. Thanks for having me.
This shocked me when I got the email. Dave, did it shock you?
I think timing was surprising for sure. I'm not surprised that Jim Sterk is not finishing out his term at Missouri. But yeah, I think the timing a little bit, even though then maybe the little bit more I reflected on it, made a little bit more sense the more I talked to some folks at the university. But, yeah, it did seem like a little bit out of nowhere, just considering, recent interviews that Jim had done with me, especially just a few weeks ago, just about his enthusiasm and anticipation for the football season and things had been trending in the right direction. And then to see that he had mutually decided to step down, sometimes those decisions aren't as mutual as they might be presented as, it was surprising. Maybe not shocking, but surprising.
Why, Dave, are you not surprised that Jim Sterk didn't finish his tenure at Mizzou?
Well, and I wrote this today. He's got 2 years left on his contract at Missouri, and I think it was fairly clear that he was not going to get an extension. He's 65 years old. There's a lot of changes coming to college sports this summer and beyond, and especially within the SEC. And the more people I spoke to yesterday and last night, I think there's folks at the high-ranking end of the university that just believe that Missouri needs maybe bolder, more dynamic leadership to confront a lot of these things that are coming at them. And everyone liked and respected Jim, but I think there was a bit of a power struggle. That might be putting it a little stronger than it was, but this was evident back when Eli Drinkwitz was hired and that hiring process unfolded. Moon Choi, who is now both the president and chancellor of the university system, is somebody that I think likes to be a visible face of the university and be involved in major things. And the board of curators at Missouri, no matter who serves on that board, is always very interested in being involved in a lot of the decisions that happen. And I just think there's a lot of challenges in Missouri's way, and they see this as an opportunity to bring in somebody new to take on a lot of these challenges.
Dave Matter of the Post-Dispatch and STLtoday.com. And Dave, you mentioned that Jim Sterk is 65. Does newer necessarily mean younger? And when they talk about bold and visionary, is part of that just younger?
Well, I don't think they're going to, look at candidates only that fit a certain age demographic. But I do think that's kind of where these jobs, when you're looking for those qualities, sort of trend. They hired the youngest head coach in the SEC football just a little over a year and a half ago. And that seems to be working out. I get the feeling that Missouri at the university level would love to go out and hire the Eli Drinkwitz of athletic directors. Now, those, you can try that and not necessarily hit on what you're looking for. But I think that would be sort of the model. Not necessarily a 37-year-old, but somebody who is on the way up as far as their career trajectory goes, and somebody that has, the energy, the vision, all of those qualities that you need to take on what it looks to be a much bigger, bolder, stronger SEC than it was just a week ago.
So for Mizzou fans, are there any names that have emerged that they should pay attention to as potential replacements for Jim Sterk?
Well, I think there's some obvious candidates out there. I don't know if it's going to be the same folks that Moon Choi and the curators will look at, but I think there's some people they really should look at. I think it starts with Mark Allnutt, a former Missouri football player, longtime administrator, worked under Gary Pinkel and Mike Alden, is now the athletics director out at University of Buffalo. Not too long ago, he was the AD at Southeast Missouri State. He is a guy that I know pretty well, and I know that this is a dream job of his if he would ever have a chance at it. And I think he's done a really good job at Buffalo. We don't talk about Buffalo very much here in Missouri and in the SEC, but it's a really good Mid-American Conference program, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. I think Ren Baker makes a lot of sense. Somebody who was at Missouri for a short time under Mack Rhodes, now the AD at North Texas. He is wildly popular, and he was when he was at Missouri as the number 2 man in charge of the athletics department, and is really a great, renowned fundraiser. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of people that don't necessarily have Missouri ties that could come out of nowhere for this job. I mean, Jim Sterk didn't have Missouri ties. Mack Rhodes, when he was hired, didn't have Missouri ties. Eli Drinkwitz didn't have Missouri ties. So I think sometimes we fall into this trap of looking for somebody with Mizzou ties, and that's not always how these things shake out, especially when you have somebody making the hire that isn't a lifetime a Mizzou lifer like Moon Choi would be.
One other name with Mizzou ties, Dave, is Doug Gillen at App State, who happened to hire Eli Drinkwitz there for his first head coaching job. And obviously, like you say, and I agree with you 100%, most times Mizzou ties shouldn't be the difference maker. But here's another guy that just seems logical. Is he a name that you've heard that might be in the mix?
Yeah, if he's somebody that Eli Drinkwitz will vouch for, and he obviously hired him at Appalachian State. He only worked with him for a little less than a year before he left there to take the Missouri job. But he is pretty well respected. He was at Missouri for a while. He was here during the Big 12 to SEC transition. So he does have a little bit of that institutional knowledge of the university, which I think can be really valuable when it comes to these kind of things. So I definitely would include him as somebody to look for in this search.
One reason that I was surprised, because you get the same emails that we do, Dave, and it seems like every week there's an anonymous double-digit $1 million donor that is contributing to this new indoor practice facility. And last year, Jim Sterk was able to raise $55.5 million for Mizzou. He has done, in that regard at least, a really good job for the Tigers, hasn't he?
He has. His whole administration has. And I think Ryan Alpert, who is the deputy AD for external operations, I think he should get a lot of credit for that also. He's really Missouri's money man when it comes to raising funds, and he is still the number 2 right now. I don't know if he would stick around. I think it would be wise to keep him in the fold because he's very responsible for raising a lot of that money. And Jim, too, gets credit because he's the man in charge for sure, and was the man that brought Ryan to work for him in the athletics department. They have done a good job of raising money, but that's just part of the job description, being an SEC AD. So a lot of the things that have happened under Jim's watch and under everybody's watch at Missouri, when you elect to go into the SEC, and Gary Pinkel warned everybody about this over a decade ago, you don't get extra credit just for doing the job. This is what you have to do to be relevant and to survive in the SEC. And I think Jim did. He deserves credit. He's done a nice job of getting the facilities that the coaches want and using the resources that Missouri has to, stay afloat in this conference.
Dave, when I'm reading your piece and just everything you just mentioned about the SEC, I see things like this new athletic director needs to be a visionary that helps Mizzou achieve exceptional success in the SEC. You have a quote that says they're looking for the next great leader who will position Mizzou as a force in the SEC. Is there a goal or a certain designation that they're looking for within the SEC, or is it just kind of one of those, it when you see it? Because I wonder if the monetary part of Jim Sterk's job, which we just said he did a great job with, isn't enough. What is then the end goal?
Yeah, I think it's finding ways to capitalize on all the things that are happening right now in college sports and not just standing pat and letting them happen. The name, image, likeness issue is something that is happening to athletics departments in this country right now, and especially in the SEC. But how are you going to get involved in this? How are you going to make this work for you? Really get engaged in the process and turn it into something that helps you as far as recruiting, your next wave of athletes. That is something that I think this next leader is going to have to really tap into. You can't just let these forces happen on your watch. You have to be involved with them and make them work for you. Missouri doesn't have the natural resources of a lot of the programs that it competes against in the SEC. They just don't. It's not just the demographics. It's the money. It's the numbers, and it's the long-term resources that Missouri just hasn't had. And you've got to find ways to not just spend the money wisely, but really get on board with a lot of these changes that are happening across college sports. And not to say that Jim wasn't doing that or couldn't do that, but the people that make the decisions, they want to see somebody in that spot that can really, really take advantage of everything that's going on in college sports right now.
Dave Matter, a lot of speculation on social media that this is a reaction to Oklahoma and Texas moving to the SEC. My expectation would be that this Stirk situation was probably in the works. Not that Mizzou didn't know about it, but the Stirk situation, it would appear to me to be independent of Texas and Oklahoma moving to the conference. Would you read it that way?
Well, I think Texas and Oklahoma moving to the conference just adds to the urgency that Missouri feels to really have a bold, dynamic leader in place there. So I don't think it's a reaction to it, but I do think that reflects the situation that Missouri is in right now. It's going to be harder to compete. It's going to be harder to win championships than to stay relevant in a league that is adding two brand name, superpower type programs. Let's face it also too. Missouri has been on par with what Texas has been for the last decade in terms of just wins and losses. Oklahoma's in another stratosphere success wise, but just adding two programs like that very well could be on Missouri's schedule every year. Just makes this job harder, but also that opens up opportunities. You have the chance now to play those teams on your schedule. You have the chance to capitalize on those opportunities in front of you. And I think it just kind of adds another layer to how challenging this AD job is and how underscores, just how badly they want somebody in position there that can really, take Mizzou to the next step.
Dave, one last thing from me. Has what Eli Drinkwitz has done in terms of recruiting and having the good season last year under the circumstances given him enough clout in the president's office and with the board of curators that they'll go to him and ask for his input about a new AD?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be in the dark on this one. He is somebody that I know that the board of curators, or at least a segment of the board of curators, really stands behind, and they were the ones who went to bat for him when it was time to get this indoor facility that he said that he wanted before they even hired him. This is, they went to him way back in December of 19 when it was time to look for a head coach and said, what are some things that you want? And he said, well, I want an indoor practice facility at Missouri if you're going to hire me. And they made that happen pretty quickly. He is going to, I wouldn't say he's going to be pulling the trigger here or making the decision or making the hire, but he's not going to find out with a press release or a tweet. I think he'll be kept in play here on whatever that decision ends up being.
Hey, Dave, you always do fantastic work covering Mizzou. Nobody is as tied in as you, and we always love getting you on the show when things like this happen. Thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
See you. Dave Matter, you can read his great work at stltoday.com. You should get a subscription. You can sign up online, and, of course, you can always pick up a newspaper, too.
I love that Mizzou really wants to go for it and push themselves to be on a certain tier in the SEC. And what Dave said about being proactive and not reactive, that's what you're going to need. When I think of dynamic and I think of the SEC, of course you think of winning, but to be a program that's at the forefront of all of these changes and not just waiting for them to happen is going to be crucial if you want to compete in the SEC.
At Mizzou, whoever did make this move, they appear to have an understanding of what this undertaking entails. And it's very difficult. In fact, I would say it's nearly impossible to reach a consistent top 10 level if you haven't been there for 30, 40, 50, 100 years. When you look at Alabama, they were great with Bear Bryant back in the 50s. When you look at Clemson, they won championships in the 70s and were good before that. Ohio State has been good forever. Notre Dame has been good forever. A&M has been good for the better part of the last half century. Oklahoma has been good forever. Florida has been good ever since Spurrier got there. So we're talking 80, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. So we're talking 40 years for Florida. Cincinnati has made their way in mid-major, certainly. Georgia's been good forever. Iowa State, Matt Campbell has made some inroads there. But are they a consistent title contender? Absolutely not. So what I'm saying is when you look at the Blue Bloods, it's hard to really get into that realm of the Blue Bloods. But at least Mizzou is trying. You have to give them credit for that.
Absolutely.
It's hard to do. That's Michelle. I'm Randy. Coming up on 101 ESPN, how do the Cardinal current outfielders stack up against the guys that we talk about every week and guys the Cardinals had but didn't need and now are killing it for other teams? How do the current guys stack up with them? That's next on 101 ESPN.
We're right back to the Carricker and Smallman podcast on 101 ESPN.
Carricker and Smallman, 101 ESPN. It's 9:05. Your time check brought to you by Clarkson Jewelers, an officially licensed Rolex jeweler. So Michelle is in the market for a new house, and you need to find a house, Michelle, that has the perfect color paint that you're looking for. I see that on house hunters all the time. It's a really important thing.
Where they don't want the home because they don't like the paint color?
Yeah. How wacky is that?
I love watching house hunters because it'll be a couple and he'll be a musician and she'll be an art teacher and their budget is $2.2 million right. in the Bahamas. And then they want to spend $2 million on their vacation home, but they don't think they have the money to buy someone to paint the interior.
Right. Or, I hate this carpet.
Right.
Get new carpet.
Get new carpet. Your budget is $2 million. I think you can afford it. Or maybe go down a little bit and then do the renovations. It's not that hard. Do you think that all those people are just actors that they pay to go showcase these homes?
I don't know if they're actors, but I think that probably they're not. It's not all real. It's not all reality TV.
But the occupations that these home buyers have, it'll be...
They're investing wisely, Michelle.
I work at a car wash, and she's an energetic healer.
Yeah.
In no disrespect, but then why is your budget $3 million?
And we want a beachfront home.
But I just want more of the backstory. If this is what you guys do, where did you get the capital to have a $3 million vacation home? Tell me your story.
I think we need that backstory.
I want it. I want to know, is his family wealthy? Are you an heiress? Did you heal the energy of someone famous and then you got a windfall of cash? I want to know these things.
Remember on VH1, Behind the Music?
Of course.
Behind the House Hunters.
Behind the buyers.
We're the producers.
Oh, let's do that.
There we go.
I really want to know how people make their money. It's very intriguing to me.
We know how Harrison Bader and Tyler O'Neill are going to make their money by hitting baseballs.
Yeah, that's right. Or sensational catches in center field and left field.
We have, rather ad nauseum, but it's been fun, complained about the Cardinals having Randy Arozarena and having him depart, having Adolis Garcia and having him depart, having Randall Grichuk and Tommy Pham and having them depart. Mm-hmm. But, Michelle, it's interesting now to look at the numbers and see where Bader, O'Neill, and Carlson stack up with the guys that the Cardinals got rid of.
Interesting how the tables turn.
It is. And obviously this is over the last couple of weeks. But if you look at the season totals of all of those players we just mentioned, and look at OPS, which is something the Cardinals look at as a gauge of offensive ability, and I think most of baseball does, OPS is important, on base plus slugging. Of all of those players we mentioned, the highest OPS belongs to Harrison Bader at 866, a 358 on base, a 507 slug. Tyler O'Neill right behind him with an 857 OPS. He's got a 331 on base and a 526 slug. And then what's really interesting is when you get to Dylan Carlson, the rookie, who has a 336 on base, 409 slug, 745 OPS. And he's essentially the same hitter as Randy Arozarena. Dylan Carlson in his rookie year, 336 on base, 331 for Arozarena. 409 slug for Carlson, 420 for Arozarena. 745 OPS for Carlson, 751 for Arozarena. 10 homers, 41 RBIs for Carlson, 13 homers, 46 RBIs for Arozarena. And even the strikes and walks. Strikeouts and walks. Carlson, 102 strikeouts. Arozarena, 104. Carlson, 41 walks. And Arozarena, 35. So they're essentially the same hitter. Dylan Carlson and Randy Arozarena. And Bader and O'Neill are better than both of those guys.
And in regards to Carlson, this is just the very beginning of his career. Imagine what those numbers could look like if he gets some seasoning on him. But should we motion Randy to rename the segment Players the Cardinals Kept that are killing it for them?
Yes. Yeah, we'll have to do that every week.
Because if we are going to talk about Randy Arozarena, Tommy Pham, all of these other players that the Cardinals did move on from when they're doing well, we do then need to give them credit when Bader, O'Neill, and Carlson are succeeding.
And Adolis Garcia, who did have a great first half, he wound up making the All-Star team, but since the second half started, Garcia has not been what he was in the first half. Now, Randal Grichuk is a really nice player, and I think he'd be a good guy to have. The Cardinals desperately need a fourth outfielder, which is what the Blue Jays' plan for Grichuk was when they signed George Springer. And he's a guy that has only a 282 on base, a 463 slug, 745 OPS, 18 homers, 63 RBIs. He's perfectly served as a fourth outfielder. But our point here is that what the Cardinals need now is not a starting outfielder. They need a fourth outfielder.
And how good does it feel to say that? Because how many years did we talk about the outfield carousel and not really know who was going to be the guys when the music stopped?
Well, and go back just over the years. I remember the opening day of 2017 when they had Grichuk, Fowler, and Piscotty, and I thought, man, this group's going to be here for 4 or 5 years. And I don't think they even lasted 2.
No.
And this young group, hopefully, will be able to keep things together. The other guy that we regret the Cardinals losing, and it would have been nice to have him for the last couple of years, is Tommy Pham, who's doing a great job as a leadoff hitter for the Padres, hitting .373, although they kind of traded for his replacement as a leadoff hitter in Adam Frazier. He's got a 792 OPS, 11 homers, 35 RBIs, and he struck out 82 times, but he has walked 55, which is more than any of these guys. So Tommy Pham is still a nice player. Our point here is that the young Cardinal players that they wanted to evaluate and they felt better about than the guys they got rid of, for the most part, those 3 are either as good or appear to be on a trajectory to be better than the guys they got rid of. So congratulations to the Cardinals on that. And sorry, never mind.
Well, let's see how they finished out the year. Yeah. Let's see if at the end of September we are looking at this list and Bader, O'Neill, and Carlson are the top 3 guys on this list. I think they're capable of doing it. And if so, then we need to have an entire segment called We're Sorry.
Yeah. Who do you feel best about among the 3 Cardinal outfielders? Who do you think is the most real of the 3?
That is a great question. Right now, I feel the best about Harrison Bader. Because the thing about Harrison Bader is you always knew what you were going to get from him from a defensive standpoint. It was always a question of, can he consistently put it together offensively? And the fact that you're seeing that now, you know he's capable of it, which is very exciting. But I would think if I'm looking at a player for the future, you have to feel like Dylan Carlson is someone that can emerge into a great player for the Cardinals that they'll have for a long time.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that what we're seeing from Harrison Bader in the second half is a fluke. But that being said, the guy I feel best about for the long term, heck, he's only 21 years old, is Dylan Carlson, who, as we mentioned, is essentially the same player as Randy Arozarena. And Arozarena last year, in his rookie year, did better. But right now that people have a line on him in terms of watching tape and knowing what he does, knowing what his tendencies are, I think it's really interesting.